All right, welcome everybody to the Historican podcast for another episode. We are truly honored today with today's guest. We have a legendary figure whose work behind the lens helps shape how the world sees hip hop. Born and raised in the Bronx, Joe was immersed in the cultural and political life of New York from a young age. His grandmother was the renowned activist Dr. Evelina Lopez Antonetti, and his father worked closely with Latin music icon Tito Puente. In the 1970s, as hip hop was emerging from the streets of the South Bronx, Joe was there with his camera, capturing it all, especially as the official photographer for the Cold Crush brothers. His images are now recognized as some of the earliest and most important visual records of hip hop culture. After facing personal struggles, including addiction and homelessness, Joe rebuilt his life, becoming a certified nurse and an EMT with the New York Fire Department. He was among the first responders on 9/11. Joe returned to photography in the 2000s, contributing to the award-winning documentary From Mambo to Hip Hop and co-authoring the acclaimed book Born in the Bronx. His photographic archive now lives at Cornell University, part of the prestigious Cornell Hip Hop Collection. He's exhibited his work around the world, inspired generations of artists, and continues to speak, teach, and document culture with the same passion he had as a teenager with the camera in the Bronx. Please welcome hip hop pioneer, legend, and Bronx native, Joe Conzo Jr.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Joe.
much.
Thank you. I'm
Awesome.
gonna hire you to do my publicity because that was spot on.
Nice job. I had that boy in class. I'm glad. Well written, my brother. Um, so, Brother Joe, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
You moved through some early awesome circles of hip hop early on. How did being Boricua born, being a Puerto Rican and being from the Bronx simultaneously shape the way you moved through all of that early hip hop?
You have to realize the time, the 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 essence of what was going on and how the people of the Bronx live during this time. It was a huge struggle going on, urban decay, the whole nine yards. And we're all cramped into these projects, Jackson projects where I was born, you know, so you had a mixture of culture going on. You had Italians, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, African American. It was a melting pot at the time. So my navigation was just everyday walk of life in what was going on. So skin color didn't play a role. It didn't. Yes. As teenagers, as kids, did we have nicknames for each other? Did we call each other out of name? Yes. I ain't gonna lie. Cocolos, the whole nine yards, roach killers, spick, this, that, and the other. But as a young kid, it wasn't meant in a derogatory way. You know, I'm 62 years old. If I still use the N word. Why? Because it's part of my vocabulary growing up, and it's not meant in an offensive way, you know? And it's just, my navigation, getting back to your question, was just an everyday walk of life, and me being Puerto Rican, Italian, Cuban, raised by a Dominican woman, you know, it just was, there was nothing to it. You know what I mean? If anything, it gave us a heightened sense of alert, when, the gangs were rampant, in the city, you knew when to cross the street. You know what I mean? And but it just, and I was that chubby little kid with that Angela Davis afro, and I picked up a camera because I wasn't athletic. I didn't have the gift of gab, this, that, and the other. And I was fortunate enough that, my stepfather introduced me to photography because he was an amateur, you know, photographer. And I just gravitated towards photography. And it just became a love and passion of mine.
Wow. Thank you, brother. Let all that seep in. Um, so your grandmother, you talk about the influences. Your grandma was an amazing community activist. And you also have the legacy of Joe Conzo Sr., who documented Tito Puente's journey as a historian. How did that legacy influence and shape you?
You gotta understand something. Being the grandson, being como se dice, el primer dolor, the firstborn. I'm the oldest out of five kids. My mother, we can't forget my mother, Lorraine Montenegro, who took over the organization that my grandmother started when my grandmother passed away in '84. Um, eh, my playground growing up were demonstrations in Washington, D.C., calling for the release of the Puerto Rican political prisoners, Lolita Lebron, Rafael Hernandez, all of them. I have pictures from my dear good friend, another phenomenal photographer, Max Colon. He sent me a picture a few years ago of me holding a Puerto Rican flag, 10 years old, marching in Washington, D.C. So that was my playground growing up, coming from an activist family. My dad, who, was estranged from me until I was about 13 years old, um, when I wasn't in the neighborhood hanging out with my friends or these pillars of, that started the culture of hip hop, I'm hanging on my dad's coattails, taking pictures of Tito Puente, Celia Cruz, Hector Lavoe, Eddie and Charlie Palmieri, you name it. And again, I didn't know how big these superstars were. Tito Puente, I called him Tio. Celia Cruz, I called her Titi. And when I wasn't with my dad, I'm with my grandmother going to all these demonstrations, taking pictures of Paul Newman because we're demonstrating against the movie Fort Apache the Bronx. And when I wasn't doing that, I'm hanging out with the Cold Crush brothers who are just forming this group that would become, the foundation of this billion-dollar industry we call hip hop today. So, as a kid, it was nothing. That was my daily routine, my daily, walk and stuff. But in hindsight, as a 62-year-old man, you're like, fuck, oh shit, you know, that's pretty dope and shit. And
Wow.
I just been blessed that, this kid from the South Bronx, and you gotta understand something, the mindset back in the 70s and 80s, we weren't supposed to leave the Bronx, let alone New York, you know? But I've been to Bulgaria. I've been to Germany, London, Japan, Korea, you name it, because I took pictures. I documented a culture. I documented a time where can never be duplicated. Let it soak in.
I mean, I think that was something, we were kind of talking about behind the scenes. Like when you're in a moment and you're taking a picture, it's like, are you just taking it because it has visual interest? It's, good energy space. And you're like, oh, yeah, I'm going to, snap now versus like when like there's something in you that's like, this is going to be momentous. Like I have to grab this now. Um, yeah.
Jess, I had to hone my skills, so to speak. So there's taking pictures, there's taking snapshots, and there's recording history. So, you hone your skills. I started out with a little point and shoot 35 millimeter camera where you didn't have to do mathematics to, set the shutter speed, the lens opening, this, that, and the other. And those were basically snapshots, you know, as a 12, 13-year-old kid. But as I got older and continued photographing, and the passion and love was becoming bigger and bigger, you know, you I took the path of documenting my surroundings. You know, photography is such a big world. You can go into fashion, you can go into architectural, you can go into so many different avenues of photography. My path was documenting my surroundings. And I just happened to be that young kid that was connected in three different worlds. I'm known as a hip hop photographer, which I don't mind, but it's so much more, because I documented the demonstrations. I documented Charlotte Street, the photo behind me with the big three-story, Puerto Rican flag. And that was because we were demonstrating against the Democratic National Convention that was being held in Madison Square Garden. And this is the day of or the day after when Ronald Reagan came looking for votes. And you can Google it on YouTube, and he was shouted out and screamed at because every politician that wants our help, the Latino culture, they always come to the Bronx seeking votes and make all these promises. Carter did it in 77. Nothing happened. Reagan did it in 80. Nothing happened. So we were just tired of all the rhetoric, almost like the rhetoric that we hear today.
Facts.
So for the most part, right, Joey, I think that and I'm glad you just said that, right? That it's more than just you being the photographer, the first photographer for hip hop, right? And it's so much more the movement and kind of just kind of like birthed the question within my mind as well. But I want to ask you first. Hip hop is new. It's a culture. There's right Black and Latinos from inner cities are building up this brand new thing. We don't know how important, how long it's going to go out, right? Like you said, it's now a $2 billion industry, right? Which is definitely not that of which that was the first creation of. So my question to you is, with that being said, what were your thoughts back then about hip hop, right? What were the first birthed spawn thoughts that you had about what hip hop was then, and what are your thoughts now? How do you feel about it now?
So, I mean, I got to be honest with you, and I'm not going to lie. I'm a 16, 17-year-old kid who's in love with, photography. Um, Film at that time, $2 a roll, 36 pictures. You know, if I didn't have a summer job or a winter job, I'd do the five-finger discount. You know what I mean? But it costs money. It costs money. So, being part of this group of teenagers, the Cold Crush Brothers, founded by, DJ Tony Tone and DJ Charlie Chase, you know, I had all access to all these park jams and shows and PALs and high school gymnasium. And, you know, I wanted to make $1 or two. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. So we would do a jam on a Friday night in South Bronx High School. I'd take some pictures, and next Friday night, next week, I'd have, 25 8 by 10s that I did in my darkroom at home because my mother let me build a darkroom in our second bathroom. And I would charge $1 for the pictures. And the Kochers brothers would throw them out. There's no internet, there's no radio play, there's no nothing. This was our ways of getting the word out. And if you went to a jam, you got an 8 by 10 photograph because it got thrown out into the audience, or you got a tape of last week's recording because another Puerto Rican brother, tape master, Elvis Moreno, who recently passed away a couple years ago, he would record all these jams. So you can buy a $5, 90-minute tape from last week's jam. And those are the recordings that we hear 40 years later of live jams. So my intention was to make $1 or two so I can continue my love and passion of photography. I had no idea that it would become what it is today, the culture itself, all the elements, DJing, MCing, breaking, graffiti, and and that's due to Africa Bambaataa putting all the elements under one umbrella called hip hop. But it wasn't called hip hop back then. It was called a jam. And we lived for next Friday, next Saturday night. And if you were lucky to do a park jam, during the week, even better. But those were my beginning intentions. And it wasn't until later on in life when I got a call from Henry Chalfant, who did Mambo to Hip Hop, the documentary, who wanted to license one of my images. I mean, all these movies were coming out, Beach Street, Wild Styles, this, that, and the other, great, beautiful, it's traveling, it's getting big, and people were putting out book, Martha Cooper, Charlie Aaron, all these other photographers. And I was like, wow, I got images too, you know, and never had the opportunity until years later, you know. So when I got that call from Henry Chalfant to license one of my images of Charlie Chase, I'm like, fuck, Ma, you still got that shoebox of negatives? Because when I was homeless and I lost everything and sold all my camera equipment, my mother saved all my negatives. She saved all my negatives.
Thank God for her.
And if she hadn't, you and I wouldn't even be talking today. And my boy, my high school classmate, Easy AD, had a bunch of them too. But it was just like, and after the movie came out, MTV started calling me, VH1, you name it, everybody and their mother. And I just started scanning my stuff. And next thing you know, Grandmaster Kaz gives me a call, and this young Swedish former A&R record producer named Johan Kugelberg wanted to meet me because he had heard about me. And I met him, and I thought he was going to buy some images from me. And it was like, no, but we're going to do a book and we're going to travel the world. We're going to do an exhibition, this, that, and the other. I'm like, yeah, 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 yeah. And lo and behold, we did a book, we did an exhibition, and I owe him everything. And we're the best of friends today, and we still work together and do exhibitions. And it's just amazing how growing up, my mother raising 5 kids on welfare, moving from house to house to house, my father being an ex-addict himself, you know, him coming back into my life, me getting into dealing with my personal demons of being an addict and becoming homeless and going into the army and getting into the medical field, that everything would come full circle. And, you know, I'm traveling the world, doing what I love to do, take pictures and do exhibitions and talk.
Joe, can you touch a little bit on I love what you were just saying there, sharing about, you talked about the struggles, right? Being on welfare, your father's struggles with addiction. You talked about even activism and, even the picture that shows there, like there's the theme of resilience, can you touch a little bit on that and like, what is it about, us as people or you yourself and family?
But it goes back 100+ years, whatever. Los puertorriqueños somos, we're survivors. We're resilient. We are, our ancestors, the Taino Indian, we are so resilient. It's in our blood. So wherever you put us, whether it's the Bronx, New York City, Brooklyn, Texas, Massachusetts, wherever, we are resilient. We overcome. We have no choice but to overcome. We're still fighting to overcome the colonialism that's going on today with Puerto Rico. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ. Here we are, the big ugly Americans and telling other people what to do in other parts of the world. And, we can't even get our own shit together. Look what's going on in Puerto Rico, after Hurricane Maria and even before that. You know, make us a fucking state already or give us our fucking independence, one or the other. You know, it's just sad. It's just sad. And again, these are my personal feelings. Um, my grandmother was a big independista, you know what I mean? She fought for the release of Lolita Lebron and all those people. And when they were released and given a pardon, one of the first places they came was to the Bronx to see my grandmother. And I have pictures of Lolita, my grandmother, Rafael Hernandez, Ascot Collazo, all those guys. They came to the fucking Bronx to see my grandmother after spending 20 plus years in fucking jail. You know? How fucking dope is
Incredible.
that?
Wow.
You
Yes.
know? But getting back to your question, we are resilient. We are just survivors, you know, and we real recognizes real. And we're passionate, we're lovable, but don't fuck with us. You know what I mean? Don't fuck with us.
Can you talk about the energy of the early days with
It was a different time. Like I said, my mother raised 5 kids by herself. Um, at one point, we lived in a one-bedroom apartment with another family, another woman and her 2 kids. So just imagine a one-bedroom apartment with 2 queen-size beds in one bedroom and 2 queen-size beds in the living room. But we ate. We had clothes on our back. And if there wasn't enough food, your next door neighbor, Doña Pancha, had food for you, or vice versa. You know, we looked out for each other. We didn't disrespect our elders. The beat cop, Officer O'Malley, knew who your parents were. You know, would give you that look or grab you by your ear. I'm going to tell your mother. I'm going to tell your father. So it was that unity back then. We looked out. You knew your neighbors. Unlike today, you move into an apartment building, you don't know who the fuck lives. You don't know nobody because we're always, we got these binders on and we live our life, this, that, and the other. And you're lucky if you know your neighbors, you know? And it was just a different time, and just we looked out for each other.
It's amazing that for the most part, right? When you speaking historically, you speak about the Lolita Lebrons and Che Guevara. So there's so many names, right? Fred Hamptons. There's so many people that when you look historically, right? And I think that you lived through a time, like you said, the resiliency of it all, right? And the one thing about our people, right? Latinos, blacks, when we come from the hood, we're gonna find something to do. The mattress that's on the floor is gonna become a wrestling mat, right? Whatever it is. And I think that culturally, there has been so many people that have been birthed through strength, through resiliency. Whereas now the current time doesn't allow for that, right? So I think that one, I want to take my hat off to you, right? Because during that time with the rallies and everything that was going on, those are dangerous times. You're taking stills of one of probably the most dangerous eras. So I want to thank you for that, brother, because you have legit, like you said, when you took the pictures and threw them out, right? Cold Crush, buy them and throw them out. That to me sounds like the first sparks of social media, the first sparks of flyers. So thank you for that, brother. But I want to know, like, and I know that you kind of touched on it, but you looking back now, how amazed are you of the history that you lived and the part that you played that taking those stills?
I'm a humble person. I'm a very, very humble person. I don't walk around with my head swollen. If I want something, I'll ask one time, and if I don't get it, it's all good. It's all good. You know what I mean? I'm gonna get it one way or another, but like I'm a very humble person. I'm a very giving person. It's so funny. I watched this movie last night that I've seen a dozen times, Pay It Forward. Oh my God, I'm crying. I'm 62 years old and crying. Shit. But it's about paying it forward, giving, and you can't. So I'm in recovery. I've been clean and sober 33 years. Okay. We have a saying in the rooms when I used to go to NA every day for like 10 years. You can't keep something unless you give it away. You have to share it. You have to share it. So, it's just today is just a different time, different era, a different kind of fight, different social media plays a huge role and it has its blessings and its curses. Okay? Because all I need is for one person to say something negative about me, and if it goes viral, I'm canceled. But knock on wood, the way I live my life today, I don't think nobody's going to do that. But, listen, none of us are saints. We've all made mistakes. But, it's just today's just a different time. And my era, there was no social media. My grandmother had a Rolodex. And a Rolodex is a little card with phone numbers. And, that's how you would get the crowd to come out to protest. The young lords, Richie Perez and all Felipe Luciano, they used to come to my grandmother's, office to mimeograph, no Xerox, mimeograph flyers for the next demonstration. Black Panthers, you know what I mean? Dr. Martin Luther King spent the night at my grandmother's house. It's just things were different back then. And every generation has their own way of doing things. And it's I speak out today when I need to speak out, but sometimes I just let today's generation do what they got to do, and whatever works for them works for them.
Do you see your photography as an active, a form of activism? Like even that picture you have behind you?
Oh, of course, of course. I license that image lots of times to documentaries and books on activism and socialism and resiliency and stuff because again, that was my playground growing up. I'm constantly doing research on my family and my grandmother. My grandmother used to do sit-ins at the Board of Ed. And when they weren't compliant or acting the way she wanted them to act, she'd form her own Board of Ed, with local, parents from the Bronx and other city. And she knew it wasn't just about the Bronx. It was Queens, Brooklyn, other areas too. And she had a network of people that, one phone call, okay, 20 people show up, another 20 people, and next thing you know, you got a couple hundred people demonstrating, you know, against, my grandmother started the summer lunch program and the summer breakfast program because when you were in school for that 9 months, you ate. But the inner city kids, that was probably their only meal during the day. And when you were out of school, she's like, what are the kids going to eat? So she started a breakfast program and a lunch program and used to go to all five borough and give out free meals to the kids. Unheard of. Unheard of. Unheard of. She started bilingual education in the New York City public schools. Unheard of. We had a large migration of Puerto Ricans in the 50s and 60s to New York City, and they'd be enrolled in the New York City public school system, and nobody was speaking Spanish. And so she's like, wait, you know, we have these phenomenal parents, phenomenal teachers. Let's start bilingual education. My grandmother is noted for starting bilingual education in the public school system. When she passed away in 84 and my mother took over, my mother started the first drug rehab for women with children called La Casita. So if Vanessa or Jessica were single parents and had a drug problem and wanted to go into drug rehab, their kids would go into foster care. And my mother's like, how are they as mothers supposed to deal with their issues and also deal with their kids in foster care? So my mother, Lorraine Montenegro, started La Casita, where a single parent, a single mother with kids would come into her program. The mother would and live there. The mother would do counseling classes all day. The kids were in school or in my mother's daycare center. And when the mother graduated from this drug program, my mother would give them an apartment, an affordable apartment, and give them a job. Unheard of. And it's still alive and kicking today with similar models across the country.
Something I just wanted to highlight, and I think it's pervasive in everything that you're sharing, your personal stories, is the importance of the support system, the community support system. And it's making me think back to, we recently had a conversation with Angel Hernandez, the Bronx historian, who was
I know
talking
Angel,
about,
good friend of mine.
yes, it was a very awesome conversation with him
Yeah.
as well, where, he was talking about the significance, especially in the 40s through the 60s, of just community businesses and it being, like an enclave for, maintaining culture, sharing information, connecting to resources. And, I can't help but just like, continue to hear that elevated in the stories that you're sharing with your grandmother's work and your mother's work, and your father's work as well, how that community system and finding the resources for ourselves, right? Because they're not going to give it to us. So it's like we have to go get them, create them, seek them out. Just how critical that is for us to continue to empower ourselves, empower our communities, and I want to say continue that legacy, right? Because something that's resonating for me particularly, and digging a little bit more into your grandmother Evelina's work, I worked in education for several years and working with bilingual students as well. How pivotal it is for, our cultures and our needs to be reflected in the educational resources that we have in the city. So I think I want to kind of try to bring it back to, you said before, it's not just a snapshot. Now I'm, making the purposeful choice to be a documentarian. And when that shift happened, where do you see your lens right now? And I know you're still continuing to be out there, and, obviously there's tons in our climate that we could unpack, but I'm just curious again, like, where's your lens focus now? And, kind of keeping in mind with all that legacy and all the work that's already happened, where does that work need to continue to go?
My lens today doesn't see as much action as it used to do. Again, I'm 62 years old. I've been retired now from the New York City Fire Department for 7 years. I'm in remission from pancreatic and liver cancer, 9/11 related, the last 6 years. So I don't shoot as much as I like to shoot, but you'll never catch me without a camera. And as much as I hate this thing, my iPhone, I hate taking pictures with it, you know, but I've taken a few shots with it. I'm just, always with the camera. I still do events. I still travel into the city to do events and and but my lens today I'm more focused on mentoring other photographers, young up and coming photographers who are phenomenal, phenomenal. You know, I'll bring one or two under my wing and bring them to events, and I'm like, you have to be that fly on the wall to take pictures. You know, if I'm doing a hip hop music event, you know, when I contact the promoters, hey, I'm Joe Conzo. I want to shoot your event. I need a leave Joe Conzo alone pass. And they're like, what the fuck is that? I go, leave me alone. I will document your event like no other photographer will, because I'm going to shoot from the front stage, backstage, left side, backside, the bathroom, the dressing room, this, that, and the other. And I'm going to give you a whole synopsis of your event that nobody else is going to see because I have a leave Joe Conzo alone pass. And that's what I tell other photographers too. You have promoters that treat photographers like cattle. You can go to the front of the stage for the first three songs and they hustle you off and you can't take another picture until the next act. I don't shoot that way. If I can't shoot the way I've always taken pictures, I'm not going to shoot your event. And it's going to be your loss. And 9 times out of 10, I have a relationship with the act that's going on. And they'll go, oh, that's Joe. You got nothing to worry about. And, I have pictures of, superstars that probably nobody will ever see because they're doing something that's not really for the public's consumption, you know? But it's Joe. I was raised or I was taught you respect the subject and the subject will respect you. So, but yeah, my lens doesn't, it's not shooting as much as I used to shoot, but I still shoot. And especially when I travel, like I'm off to Phoenix in 2 weeks, Arizona for an event. They're bringing me out there. Then when I come back, I'm going to Detroit and then I'm going to Amsterdam. So, I'm still traveling. Not as much, but like I recently moved up to upstate New York, Middletown, New York from the Bronx.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. I have friends out there.
and there's nothing like waking up to fucking woodpeckers and geese and deers instead of, the damn fucking ambulances and cop cars and fighting and fireworks and stuff. Again, I just want to enjoy the fruits of my labor, so to speak. My granddaughter's up here. I love her to death. She's my Energizer bunny. She's like, Papa, come pick me up, And, I've been married 26 years and my wife works and, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good.
Are
I'm
you
good.
still working on your movie or documentary? It was supposed
So
to be
yeah.
on.
So there's a documentary being shot about my life. That's April Hernandez and her husband Jose. April is a former or still is a Hollywood actress. She was in movies and television, and we became friends years ago. And they came up with this idea to shoot a documentary about my life, and it's a labor of love. It's been 10 plus years, and that's okay. That's okay. It's the evolution of Joe Conzo, so to speak. And so when it happens, it happens. Hopefully I'm around when it when it debuts and shit.
Is it
But
going to incorporate like your family history too as well?
everything,
Too much? Oh,
everything,
wow, that's awesome.
everything. I mean, you I can't tell my story without my family story. They're so intertwined,
That's
Uh,
a quote right there.
it's so true. I mean, I am who I am today because of my grandmother, my mother, and my father, my aunts and uncles. My Aunt Lillian was the first head librarian of all the Bronx libraries. First Puerto Rican woman to be in charge of all the Bronx librarian. My Aunt Elba, who just passed away last year, she was, called La Madrina de Arte. She had given so many artists their first chance. She worked at the Association of Hispanic Arts back in the 70s and 80s, and they were an institution that gave budding artists their first job or something. So, my family history is rich, and you can't you can't tell the story of one of us without including the rest of us, so to speak. And I'm the gatekeeper of my family's history, so I have all my mother's papers and my grandmother's papers, and they just named a city park after my grandmother 2 years ago. So on Prospect Avenue, 156th Street in the Bronx, on one corner is the Lorraine Montenegro Way, and across the street, on another corner is the Doctora Evelina Antonetti Way. How fucking dope is that? A mother-daughter street naming, probably the only one in existence in the entire United States, you know, on the same block.
You have left and you continue to leave us so much legacy, brother. That's amazing. It's amazing.
I don't have a street named after me, but I'm part of the Bronx Walk of Fame. So you walk down the Grand Concourse, you see my banner,
Yeah, yeah.
Conzo. So it's pretty dope.
I know Jess is going to tell you more, but I'm just so deeply touched at how you present your calm, reflective, powerful nature of an experience that you continue to in this moment, you've given me back myself through images and words and just quotes that amongst all these bricks and all this dirt, there were heroes thriving and you were capturing. And I am just immensely thankful for all the giving. Um,
Thank you, Joe. Thank
what a
you.
blessing to speak with you today.
Yeah, I think I've been writing down notes. So every time I'm looking down, that's what I'm doing, just like capturing what I'm trying to, take in and process now and moving forward. But I think the themes that come up that are consistent, again, it's not just a snapshot. The importance of education and literacy and the arts and bringing that together and the power that that has to move people, to move communities, to elevate and empower. Um, and so I know, all of us in here are creatives as well. It's just making me think about, personally, what's my next steps? What do I need to do, through my artistry, with my voice as a poet, as someone who is still in elementary education to continue to connect with my community, connect with young people, to again highlight the realities, highlight our richness, the beauty of our culture, empower, and then ignite, which is, I think, is the
Yes.
hope of all of us. Like, how do we help ignite and continue that fire burning to make people excited to be knee deep in the work, right? Whatever is your medium for communication, for elevation, but to continue that forward momentum. So I think we would, and you've dropped a lot of gems, but if there were a particular, piece of advice that you think you could share to continue to hold our own selves, with that motivation and that fire to continue our work in elevating and moving the work and the culture, like what advice would you give?
I mean, listen, I'm gonna give it to you the way it was given to me. Um, my grandmother was so forward thinking, she had a little house in Puerto Rico and Salinas, and when she traveled out there, I got to go out there. I knew who Pedro Albizu Campos was. I knew who Arturo Schomburg was, because of my upbringing, through my grandmother, my mother, my father. My father is 82 years old and still teaches at Ossos Community College and at Lincoln Center, about the history of Latin music and Tito Puente and what was going on back then because he lived it. He lived it. But again, it's about the future. It's about the youth. It's about the kids. It's about planting those seeds in the future. We're all adults here. We are getting older every day, but it's about planting that seed in our family, in our kids, and in other kids, and in education. And I love when I get invited to schools, to elementaries, high schools, and stuff. You know, they know who Jay-Z is or Travis Scott. They don't know who Kool Herc is or Charlie Chase, the Puerto Ricans that helped birth this culture. And I speak about that. It's about, and I have the photos to back up what I'm saying. And, I love telling the kids instead of picking up a gun, you want to shoot somebody with a camera. You know, the onus is on us to document our history, our culture. We can't let outsiders do that for us. I'm part of a collective of photographers called El Seis del Sur. David Gonzalez, Angel Franco, Edwin Pagan, Ricky Flores, Reyes, and we all live during this time period where even till today when I travel, oh, how was it living in the Bronx at that time? The French have a saying, Le Bronx, which is a derogatory, term used to describe somebody, that's dirty or whatever, because we still are labeled as, even though we're thriving and this, that, and the other. And, I tell them it was great. I turned out well, you know, but
I'm good.
I'm good. But Jessica, getting back to, the onus is on you to, and all of us to plant those seeds in our youth because they are our future. We're not going to be around forever. I may not be as active as I'd like to be because of health issues, because of whatever. But, I rarely turn down an opportunity to speak to the kids. Rarely, rarely. Or speak on a panel or contribute my images to books and documentaries. That's how I can still do what I want to do in terms of voicing my, strengths, hopes, and experiences in life.
I gotta say, brother, and I know that this is thrown out,
George, why do they call you light skin?
So I'll break it down for you. Light skin, LITESKIN, stands for living it through every situation on nature.
Oh,
Yeah, which segues into what I was about to say. I know this is thrown around a lot, right? I gotta say that we are blessed with your presence based off of the warrior essence that you have, right? We know about your struggles, right? Your past addictions. We know about your fight with cancer. The fact that you said that you are in remission right now. The fact that you have that wind behind your back that many people don't have role models or people to look up to say, hey, this person right here is what I want to be like, right? So I want to thank you for that, right? Because we don't have that pedigree, we don't have that fabric as much as we used to, right? And most of them are gone, right? So thank you for being a living icon, legend, and like you said, because you weren't good in sports or because you weren't good in whatever, you picked up a camera, found your passion, and created your own lane that has left concretes of amazingness, right? And I gotta ask you, brother, two-part question. Actually, I got two questions. One is a two-part question. Is there a shot that you've taken, or what would be your favorite shot, right? And then the second part to that is there a shot that somebody else took that you've been in awe of?
So your first question, there's a couple shots like the one in my background. That's Charlotte Street. Charlotte Street was the poster child of the Bronx at the time, where Hollywood used to come and make movies, war movies, because it reminded them of bombed out Berlin and London and this, that, and the other. Because that's what it looked like back then. It was a war zone. All these abandoned buildings. Vivian Vasquez, her documentary, Joe, what's the name of her
Decade
documentary?
of Fire.
Decade of Fire. She dives deep into it. And, she used a bunch of my photographs in there, how this was one of the biggest crimes against humanity, where landlords were burning the buildings, collecting insurance money, and just destroying the fabric of the Bronx. And, you know, other politicians, Robert Moses, who I recently found out years ago, this motherfucker was the commissioner of parks, commissioner of this, commissioner of that. He built the Cross Bronx Expressway, which divided the Bronx and broke up communities and stuff. And so this picture behind me is one of my most iconic images. If you want to talk about hip hop culture, there's an image that I have called the Popper. And it's a silhouette shot of a young kid in a cipher. You don't see his face. He has a Kangol hat, white gloves on, and he's popping. True story. I hated that picture because my flash didn't go off. So it was a mistake. And so I have a series of this guy dancing where the flash went off, but a series where the flash didn't go off. And if you know about photography, you have to wait a few seconds for the flash to recycle for it to flash. You have to know the mathematics of your lens and depth of field, the whole nine yards. Unlike today, iPhone does everything for you. There's no thinking, so to speak. But that popper shot is one of my most iconic shots where I've licensed it to Nikes and Adidas and so many other things because it's just so iconic. You see a b-boy doing his dance, but you don't see his face or anything. And like it was years later, I was like, oh shit, this is a fucking dope shot. So yeah, there's a handful of shots. I have a shot of Paul Newman. I wandered onto the set of the movie Fort Apache, The Bronx, and Paul Newman's filming a scene. I had cut school that day, and I'm taking pictures, and all of a sudden, Paul Newman and I hope everybody knows who Paul Newman is. Because I speak to the young kids today, they're like, who? So Paul Newman, one of the biggest actors at the time, liberal actor, you know, did this movie called Fort Apache the Bronx, but the movie portrayed Puerto Ricans and blacks as pimps, prostitutes, murderers, drug addicts, this, that, and the other. And the story behind that was that the producers contacted my grandmother. She had two facilities, three facilities, a daycare center and stuff. And they said, listen, we're doing this movie, Fort Apache, the Bronx. We need a place for Paul Newman to lay his head down in between filming and stuff. Can we use your daycare center, the whole nine yards? We're going to give 200 jobs to, local Bronx people and stuff. And she was like, phenomenal. Jobs? No problem. By the way, can I see the script? No problem. They sent her the script. ¿Y pa qué fue eso? She read the script. She made some phone calls, went through the Rolodex. She called Richie Perez from the Young Lords and all these other activists, and they formed a group called CAFA, CAFA, Committee Against Fort Apache. And we went on the attack and protested at every film site, everywhere, went on TV shows, did TV interviews, and we actually won. We went up against Hollywood and we won. So if you watch the movie today, it begins with a disclaimer, unheard of. The beginning of the movie is there's a disclaimer saying that, in no other words, this movie doesn't portray the hardworking men and women of the Bronx, blah, 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 blah. And that was a huge win for us, for Hollywood to do that. So, I have a picture of Paul Newman. He locked eyes with me and I took a picture, and a film crew woman has her hand out trying to stop me. So that's another iconic photo that it was published in the New York Post, and it was the first time I ever had a picture published. So I was excited. I got paid $25. It was on page 2 of the New York Post. But the best part, besides making $25, was seeing my name. Photo by, that to me was phenomenal. George, what was the second question? I'm sorry.
So my second question was, and phenomenal story. That must be one of the main reasons why Paul Newman has salad dressing now, right? He could,
and it's funny because he made some remarks saying, I still believe in this, that, and the other. It's like, motherfucker, you sold your soul for $3 million to make this movie.
yeah.
Come on, stop it.
But
did you donate that $3 million? No.
Right. And that's the thing, that with us, right? It seems like when people of color create something, other cultures try to find a way to scavenge, and take from it so that they can make their money, right? And sometimes using us as the puppets in their puppeteer strings, right? So that's not shocking, right? It's historically speaking, it's been going on. The second question was, is there a shot that somebody else may have taken?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I had mentors growing up, people that I looked up to. Carlos Ortiz, phenomenal photographer. His work is at Central in New York City. Phenomenal photographer, documentarian, shot the Latin music scene, this, that, and the other. And another photographer who passed away is Frank Espada. And if you never heard of Frank Espada, Google him now, because this motherfucker. So he was from Brooklyn, and he did a book called The Puerto Rican Diaspora, something like that. And he was good friends with my mother and good friends with my grandmother, and I just turned to him for advice and stuff. And when I deposited my stuff at Cornell University, he guided me on that because his stuff is at UCLA. So I had mentors, Hiram Montserrat was the personal photographer for the Young Lords. Phenomenal pictures, phenomenal documentation. But Frank Espada took a picture of this Puerto Rican brother with an afro, and you see half of his face, and the rest is the Puerto Rican flag. And it was during a demonstration. And like I said, Google Frank Espada. He's been dead for over 10 years now, but like I looked up to people, to other photographers and their work. And then, on the hip hop scene, there's Martha Cooper, who's 80 years old, still taking pictures every day, traveling the world. We're the best of friends. Jeanette Beckman, Henry Chalfant, we've traveled the world together, doing exhibitions and stuff. So, as much as I don't agree with the moniker Joe Conzo, the man who took hip hop's baby pictures, I'll run with it. You know what I mean? I'll run with it. How can you dispute the New York Times? I'll run with it. But
Man,
I have so much more than just hip hop.
clearly.
And I'm just grateful to Cornell and Johann Kugelberg, my friend who brokered the deal, who started this collection, that my negatives are deposit. My negatives sit on the same shelf as the Gettysburg Address. How fucking dope is that? How fucking dope? Four scores and seven, how fucking dope
Uh,
is that?
and I love that you say that. That
I mean, Cornell has, this one of the largest collection of civil rights movements and this, that, and the other. My negatives sit on the same, my negatives will live for decades, for hundreds of years when I'm gone. And the reason why I did that was because you wake up, you look at the newspaper, John Coltrane's master tapes found in a dumpster, Sugar Hill Gang master recordings burned up in a fire. You know what I mean? I had all my negatives in my apartment. God forbid something happened. And they made me a deal that I couldn't refuse. They gave me a check. I'm not gonna lie. My
Well
ar-
deserved.
my negatives were digitized because of today's world of digital photography, but I still own the rights, the IP, the intellectual property of my images for 50 years after I die. So when I'm dead, my kids will enjoy those rights, and my grandchildren will enjoy those rights.
And you know what you're talking about is legacy. Legacy beyond flesh, right? We can sit here, we could, what they say, people could tell you, um, everything that you bring them, gifts and all that. But the most important thing is how a person makes you feel and what leaves behind. So, um, one last question I do have because of hip hop, because of I'd be remiss not to ask this of you. What
George,
is
go
your
ahead. Go ahead. Go there. Go there. Go
what
it.
is
Go
your
ahead.
favorite hip hop track ever? What is one that impacted your life? Um,
Oh, I thought you were gonna go left.
I was, but I need to know that because me being the hip hop.
Listen, to be honest with you, I'm not into hip hop rap music. I'm a house head. I love my house music.
House
Kenny
music
Dope
all night long.
all night long.
We
Kenny
got to
Dope.
cover that on the podcast.
yes,
Kenny,
yes, we
Kenny,
have to have the Historican House podcast.
listen, Kenny Dope's coming up to my house next week to look at my archives, Little Louis Vega, Men at Work, Masters at Work. I love my house music. I love my Spanish. I love my Fania All Stars and I love my Tito Puente. Moving up here to Middletown, New York, and getting a house, I started collecting vinyl again. And I have 1,000 vinyl records. And my wife's like, what the? I'm like, you collect shoes, you collect pocketbooks. I'm collecting vinyls. You know what I mean? And I love it. I love it. Um, but there's a few cats, I'm old school. I love that old, the Curtis Blows and did you know that Tito Puente played on Sugar Hill Gang's first album? Google
Wow.
Sugar Hill Gang's first album. And on the cover of the album, it says special appearance by Tito Puente. And there's this cut called Sugar Hill Groove where Master Wonder Mike and all those guys, Master G, they're rapping, and then they go, and on the timbales, we have Tito Puente, and Tito Puente does his fucking 1 minute solo and shit. People don't know that shit, but that's our history.
You still giving us back.
Jimmy Delgado, a young 18-year-old, has a gold record for playing the timbales solo on the breaks, Curtis blows the brakes. These are the brakes. And that's a young Jimmy Delgado, 18 years old. And Jimmy's been playing with everybody for years. But this was, people don't know our contributions, our history when it comes to this rap music, this hip hop culture, you know. So, favorite song, I'm old school. I like the live recordings from back in the days that I have them all digitized because Cornell um, and Johan found a stash of recordings that Tape Master did, and they're all digitized and preserved up in Cornell. I can get into most deaf. Umi says, I'm just a man doing the best that I can, living in that's me he's singing about. My Umi said, my higher power. That's the rap music that I gravitate to. Common, but like today, and it's crazy, my children who are, 37 and 27, my daughter and my son, they know who Travis Scott is. They know who Young Wheezy, Little Jeezy, Wheezy, this, that, and the other. And like, I'm like, you don't know who Cool Herc is? You know who Charlie Chase is? You don't know who Whipper Whip? Oh, Dad, that was in your time. I go, well, you wouldn't have these guys you're talking about today if it wasn't for these guys that I'm talking about. So it's about education.
Amen to that.
It's about education. You know, Questlove didn't know that Tito Puente played on fucking Sugar Hill Gang until I fucking told him to his face. And he was like, oh my fucking God. It's just like, and I have the respect of all these people. LL Cool J did the forward to, the third printing of my book, Born in the Bronx. And, you know, have the respect of a lot of these. I was with Nas the other day at a funeral. He was like, blessings, Joe Conzo, much respect. And so yeah, yeah.
Beautiful,
How
beautiful.
fucking dope is that?
Yeah,
How
How
fucking
fucking
dope is
dope is
fucking
that?
that?
dope is that?
How fucking
I
dope is
wanna,
that?
I want to put
I'm
that on
gonna
a
trade.
t-shirt so bad.
I'm gonna
Trademark it,
copyright
please.
that.
Trademark
How
that.
fucking dope is that? My
Slash Joe Conzo.
my other trademark saying is "fuck you, pay me." You know what I mean? Because these companies and they love doing this dance. Joe, we want these images and this, that, and the other. I'm like, okay, here's my price. Joe, but I'm like, this is my price. But Joe, it'll be good for you. I mean, good for me. You called me. I didn't call you.
Exactly.
So they like doing this dance. I'm like, you want to dance? Let's dance. But I'm not going to dance too long. Okay. After 2 or 3 emails, I'm going to just say, no, go on to the next. And like having the power of saying yes and no is great because I'm able to say, all right, you're MTV, you're going to pay this much money. Your North Carolina University, I'm donating this image to you guys. You know what I mean? So I'm always I support education. I support giving back. But when you're a multi-million dollar company, you're paying. And like the
Right.
real fat joke, yesterday's prices aren't today's prices. And that's it.
Joe, thank you so much. We want to, respect your time. We appreciate you taking the time out to spend a little time with us and talk about your history, your story. You've captured the essence of what this podcast is about: our story, our history, preserving it and sharing it with the world. We have to share it, and then also, like you said, educating young people because it's important. We need to educate our young people, our children, so that they can go forth. Knowing your history is what's going to empower you to go forward to the future. So we just thank you, and we want to give you all the flowers, showing you all the respect. You're a legend, a pioneer
Thank you.
beyond hip hop, and from you to your family, we are so thankful for you, and we just
And Joe, let me just end by this. Nobody can erase our history. Nobody. It's
right,
been tried time and time again, and nobody can erase your podcast is gonna live on forever. You know what I mean? Your interviews, it's nobody's gonna be able to erase our history. And as much as I don't want to talk about it, but I'll just end with this, every couple years it's gonna come up, what role us Latinos, Hispanics, Puerto Ricans, whatever umbrella you want to say, played in this culture. We were there from day one. Period. End of story. Period. End of story. We helped develop, contribute everything, whatever element it was. And if you weren't from the Bronx at that time, you ain't got no business speaking on it.
Alex, drop the mic. There you go.
Punto.
You ain't got
And we
no
can end it right
business.
there.
You ain't got
Punto.
no business speaking on it. And cats will come out of the woodwork, this, that, and the other, and try and do a documentary and try and steal my photographs. I'm like, yo, you can't use my, oh, yeah. I'm like, listen, I've sued Google, I've sued Yahoo, I've sued so many on my intellectual property. And if you want to use, my images to support a narrative that I don't believe in, I'll see you in court.
But you know what the power within that is, whenever somebody tries to erase what you've done, right, as a people, as an individual, whenever somebody tries to steal what you've done, right, with your intellectual property, that's because of your greatness. That's because there's a threat that is created, right? And they don't know how to deal with it outside of trying to steal.
And George, again, I'm that humble motherfucker. If
Mm-hmm.
you ask
I
me
love it.
nice enough,
I love it.
I'll run down the Grand Concourse butt naked. It's all about how you ask me,
Yeah.
And you want
But you
to.
know what? That your greatness, right? One, I want to thank you for your greatness, right? Like I said, the lineage that you have created. But I gotta say, brother, the more impactful, more powerful is your humility. The fact that you are so humble. And despite the fact of you creating part of the spark of the forest fire that has become such an amazing culture, right? Just by capturing it, you still remain humble. And I thank you for that, brother, because that's something that you don't teach that, right? That's something that is innate. That's something that we try our best to have that cyclical prospect of it going through our children and next generations. But thank you for that, brother, because that means so much to us who do it right as best we can and try to put in our best forward without asking for a lot. So that's why a lot of times people try to take advantage of it. Thank you.
And it's just, if I respect you, respect me back. Very much, I'll share with whatever strengths, hopes, and experience I have with whoever. I don't discriminate because of skin color or whatever. I live in Trump country up here in Middletown, and it's all good. It's all good. I'll have a decent conversation with somebody who swears by this president we have, and I'll break it down to them. But we're still friends. It's all good. It's all good. My dad gets all rattled up. Oh, this president, this, that, and the other. I'm like, Dad, relax. As long as if he's not messing with your pension or your Social Security, don't worry about it. 4 years go by like this. 4 years go by like this. And it's not like we never been down this road before. People forget Ronald Reagan. People forget.
That picture behind you says it all. What we come from, what we've overcome.
We will survive. We will move on. We will be okay.
Pa'lante.
Nobody, pa'lante siempre. That's it. Keep going forward. Keep going forward. And we're going to be fine. And it's people like you guys who take your time to do shows like this and record it because, again, this will live on forever and people will be able to, oh shit, check out this podcast. You know what I mean? And it's just, we have to continue. Each one teach one. That's it.
Definitely.
Vaya.
Thank you
How
again.
fucking dope are you, Joe?
Yes.
How fucking dope is he, yo?
Yes.
Jessica, I'm gonna make a t-shirt.
You need to.
How fucking dope am I?
So I have T-shirts with my Born in the Bronx logo. I have T-shirts with "fuck cancer" and stuff. But like, that's my next T-shirt. How fucking
Yeah.
dope is that?
You got 5 sales right here.
Word, def,
Real.
most def, most def.
Yes. But thank
you
you
know
again,
what?
Joe. We appreciate you.
Just to give you a kind of like a marketing, right? How FU King dope, right? You being the king and doing what you've been doing for us to lay down. I'm telling you, brother, that right there is a seller, man. And let me know when that comes out. I will buy that, support it, promote it, whatever you need. You got 5 people here to support whatever you're doing, brother.